This is the Digitakt Mark II. I've personally called my Digitakt the Digitakt for years, and in this video, I'm going to continue doing that. So just forewarning you, I'm going to be pronouncing it Digitakt this entire time. Shameless plug, by the way, if you're planning on picking up a Mark II or a Hydrasynth or an MPC or anything like that, if you use my affiliate links below, then it helps out the channel directly. So if you like this content and you want to support this channel, then using the affiliate links is a great way of doing that. So I've had this for basically a month and a half, and I'm now giving you my thoughts. So with this setup, I do have a Hydrasynth hooked up as well, Hydrasynth Explorer, and it's going directly into the inputs of this Digitakt 2 along with the Midi in and out, so I can play stuff. So you can hear the Hydrasynth, but I'm also playing whatever is selected. And that is because I have the auto channel set up to communicate properly. So when you get a brand new Digitakt 2, the auto channel is usually 10. So if you put any instrument that you have hooked up to your Elektron box and it's communicating through the auto channel, which is 10, then whatever channel is selected will get MIDI information and trigger accordingly, which is number 1, the kick drum right here. Also, when I first got this, I basically just sampled a bunch of stuff. And overall, this sampling process just feels fantastic. I mean, the first Digitakt also felt great. There is an evolution to this whole process right here, and it's great. And now it does stereo. Stereo was one of the biggest things. So now with this stuff, I can get that nice stereo field recorded. In fact, if I do this right now, record. Yes to stop. Oh, I think I have the monitoring. Yeah, the monitoring is giving some delay in there. So the original recording is not going to have that, but really handy and easy to just like get some sampling going. And the way the trim and zoom feels is just very intuitive. So if you are at all curious as to whether or not the sampling process feels good on the Digitakt, I can for sure tell you that is a nice experience. So I like just trimmed out this front. So I could save this. Let's go to settings for random. Windy emission sounds good. Save this. It's gonna want me to put it on something. We'll put on track 15 here. Oh, also doubling the track count, going from 8 tracks to 16. That's obviously huge. Big workflow adjustment right there. You feel like there's less limitations, even though limitations tend to produce creativity. I always felt like 8 mono tracks was a bit on the limiting side for doing stuff that I really wanted to, which is typically why I paired it with other synthesizers just in general. Let's hear this. It's on Warp Machine at the moment. Let's go one shot. So obviously I have stuff built into this pattern already because I copied it from a previous pattern. So there's things that are already happening. But now what's interesting is I could turn this, I could turn down the Hydrasynth. I'm gonna turn on the metronome. I've been doing 2-bar pre-roll just cause I'm gonna record this. Whenever I'm doing unquantized recording, I always open up the first measure right here and I double check this because if it's behind the timing, then it won't trigger when you first start playing the loop. Okay, we got a kick. Again, I'm going to put this back on the timing. I'm going to make these kicks a little bit more quantized. So maybe do like 30% or so. We could do like some hats that I have set up right here. Do some with this. It's just 1 bar that I have set up on here. Track 7, I have like another hat sound. Do this. Same type of stuff, okay. Give this a little quantize as well. So we kind of have a little like, you know, a little vibe going here. It's all like texture right here. I'm gonna get this in here. timing. So one thing that's really cool that we could do with some sampling, and especially with it having 8 bars now, which is 128 steps, it's actually easier to record some performances directly into the sampler and have it be the exact measures that you want. So you can actually like slice those up as a grid or just trigger it as a one shot that goes all the way through 8 bars. So let's get rid of this. We'll go function no to delete it. And then we need like a bass sound. I'm gonna go by category, then go bass. Okay, so this is kind of like a polite fretless bass. You know, it's not crazy or anything like that. But I think that could be really cool with the processing that happens inside this box. I don't know if they put this into Digitakt 1. They might have towards the end, and I just hadn't used that yet. But now you can actually trigger the start. See our start right here? This is so huge for people that like to play things into a sampler and have it on time with it at the same time. So you want to make sure this is on R start, because you could do threshold or R start and then you do arm. And then I'm on track 16 right here. Track 16 is currently muted. It has nothing going on. So I can actually play Midi directly into this and not have it affect anything. And I'm using this as kind of like a placeholder essentially, because I want to perform some audio, but I don't want to unhook my Midi. So I'm just using track 16 for that. Now here's the trick. So because I have the metronome on and I have a 2-bar pre-roll, if I hit record, if I hold the record button and hit play, it's not going to start yet until there we go. So we got our bass and it recorded all that MIDI into track 16 as well. If I wanted to use that for some reason, I'm not going to use that though. I'm going to save this sample, I think, into track 12 here. So everything's good here. That's an 8-bar sample. Yes to save. And let's go settings for a name, opaque bass. We want to assign it to track 12. Now with track 12, we got to set this up to be able to do a one shot. Actually, it's already one shot right now, but we want this to play forever. What's it? Also, let's get rid of the reverb delay. Take out the chorus. Now with the bit reduction, this is fun right here. Too much, but you get the idea. So it's got some grit right there. In the filter section, I want to change the filter type here. I'm going to go equalizer. Okay. Yeah. So. So give it a little bump like that, and then on the second filter, you can always shave off the top end a little bit. It's too much. I'll bring the volume down a bit. Okay, now we need a trigger to start this. This guy right here. So that's one way of doing it with one shot. You can also do the grid mode, which I actually think is really cool. You can get some different kind of flavor out of it. So I played it without any time corrections, so it's all my timing essentially on there. But with the grid mode, you can kind of like fake some stuff with it. So with this grid, I'm going to put this all up to 64. The other thing too is I'm going to take out this trigger, and then I'm going to turn the measures into 1 right here. So it's just one measure at the moment. And then I'm going to go like this. So I basically put 1/8 notes on the first measure, and it's going to go through and only want to play that. And that's obviously not what we want, right? We want it to go through all the slices in the grid. So we go here, put it back up to 8 measures. So something that's very convenient and awesome that I learned from watching Ricky Tinez's video is that when you're on the source page on grid, a little secret shortcut here is you hit yes, and then it goes create linear locks or create random locks, and you want create linear locks if you want it to sound like it's continuous. So you do that, and now let's take the click off. Start messing with the amplitude now. Yeah, it's kind of weird, but you get the idea. It's fun. Let's get something else here. We're gonna take this ambisigns right here, go into the sampler, get rid of the sample. Now with this, I'm just gonna record a one shot and then use it in the keyboard mode here to show you what that's like. So I'm gonna hit yes. Yes. Okay, chop this up real quick. I think that's good. Save. Let's get a random name. Turtlenecking. Voluntary award. Yeah. Ooh, not sure where to put it. Maybe I'll just do, actually, I think 3, I'm pretty sure is safe. Okay, this is currently in slice mode. We're gonna get rid of that. Go one shot. Yeah, so we have a bit of an attack, but there's some sustain and release. What's the filter on? Filter is just taking off some top end. This is also taking off some stuff. What I love about the second filter is almost always there's some low end you want to take out of things because you don't want to muddy up the bottom. And it's so easy to do with the second filter. So we kind of have this like vibey sound right here. Now, something that I haven't shown yet in this video, but I used a lot in this past month is this keyboard mode. It's actually really great for when you want to make some melodic material on this device by itself without having to bust out another keyboard. I prefer having a keyboard, which is why I set up the Hydrosynth right here in the first place. But I did make quite a few beats with just this interface and like the Retrig mode. And it's pretty useful, honestly. It's definitely functional. There's the fold feature, so you can like fold all the stuff into just the notes that are in the scale that you're playing. So for instance, I'm playing basically C minor. And when you're in the keyboard mode, you can just hold the keyboard button to go octaves up and down. So it's really convenient. So I will record something. I'll put the click back on so I can get the lead in. Record on quantized. I think this lower end is going to be a bit too quiet, so I'm going to go up an octave. So that's kind of an example of using this like by itself with that keyboard, but I still prefer having a keyboard with me. Let's turn this all the way down. So what you don't get with the keyboard inside the Digitakt is you don't get any velocity, so you have to go in and basically add velocity afterwards, which if you're into programming your beats, which obviously the Elektron workflow lends itself to really well, then no problem, right? But if you're like me, you like to play on the keys, you'll basically get that velocity right away. I will redo this. like so, with the keyboard now. That works. One of the workflow changes that I really appreciate with this box is the track mode, trig mode type of thing. So you got tracks, you got velocity. So if you do want to have velocity control, you do have that access on here. And I did use that quite a bit on standalone beats. Then you have retrig mode. Which is really cool, honestly. I'm not exactly sure where this started with the Elektron process. I know on the Digitakt, you have 13 through 16 that can do different things for whatever track you have selected. And maybe that's where it started actually, but I don't know for sure. This is definitely an evolved version of that. So if you're a fan at all of doing ratcheting like a lot throughout your beats, then this makes it so convenient just to be like, obviously it's better if you have it like on a hi-hat. Another thing too is once you have a ratchet on a particular track, like if you hold this, press that again, you can get to the retrig parameters here. So if I were to turn on the retrig for this particular trigger right here, I can tell it, like I can say I want it to be an 1/8 note. I could say let's do 40/8. And then you can also tell it to just drop in volume gradually with this thing or increase in volume. And this is so cool. I really like this feature for these ratchets. Let me mute everything here. Now you can hear this. I will copy this one. I'll put it here, here, and here. Now you'll hear it on the quarter notes. Let's do number 5. We'll drop this volume even further and maybe do it like 30-second notes. Yeah, the ratchet function is very fun. I really like it a lot. Oh, another thing that I haven't talked about yet is the comb filter. I used it quite a bit, and honestly, it is awesome. Let's turn this down. Get rid of some of that low end. Change the character immediately. Comb filter is awesome. It's very functional at changing the character of the sound and giving it like a vibe that just is not of the original sound. Like yeah, you can hear the original, but like and it's possible after a while you could pick it out pretty easily and be like, oh, you're using the comb filter trick again. I will say also that I think as a sampler, this is fantastic. Aside from missing the ability to manually slice things, which is really strange. We'll get to that in a moment. The sound quality and the experience of like trimming stuff in the actual sampler, all top notch, and the machines to manipulate the sounds have all been interesting ways of working with stuff. And again, a lot of that stuff does come from the Digitakt one. So if you are at all curious about some of that stuff and just want a taste of it, you could technically just get the Digitakt one and have like the mono sample version of it. But the fact that you have 16 tracks to work with, all of them are stereo. And also the 3 LFOs, I didn't even mention this stuff. I mean, I think on the Digitakt one, it was 2 LFOs. So now you have like an additional LFO per track. it's like, I don't feel like I'm missing anything at that point. One thing I haven't talked about is the Midi capability, and any of these tracks can now become Midi channels as well, which is a welcome addition, really cool. When I originally first got the Digitakt, I basically used it as a sequencer for a bunch of different gear. That was kind of its main job. It would do drums and then sequencing other synthesizers on the desk. I used it that way for years, actually. The MPC took over that role, honestly. Also, there was only 4 bars, so that was a big limitation as to what I could write. And 8 bars is technically still a limitation, but with the stuff that I'm making with Digitakt, I don't mind it at all. I'm okay with the fact that I have a certain amount of options to work with, and I can get by with that. Also, the song mode, I didn't even talk about that. I haven't really used song mode that much, but I know if I do want to get really advanced with some specific measure building and song building, song mode's right there to get it done. So the Digitakt 2, it's definitely become its own thing, in my opinion, as to how I'm going to use it. I'm probably not going to build out big sets with 4 or 5 different pieces of synthesizers with the Digitakt as the main brain for sequencing it. I'm going to treat this definitely more as like a sampler. So in terms of cons, the biggest one that everyone talked about is the lack of slicing for things that you record. And it is a little strange that they didn't put this in here yet. I mean, I can understand that when you go down that route to individually select the slices and move them around, you have to have a lot more like metadata that goes in with the files. So it's possible that the big limitation right there is just the infrastructure isn't built properly to handle it. Whereas like the Octatrack, it has that, but it's clearly a completely different platform at this point. The Digitakt 2 features a lot more space. Before you had like this pool of 128 samples that you could load at any given time for your project. Now that's like 8 times that. So any type of limitation that you thought you had before, again, stereo samples as well. So before it was like 128 mono samples. Now it's 8 times 128 stereo samples. So technically there is a lot of stuff for them to keep track of if they were going to add sample slicing. Because if they're going to add that feature, they technically need to make sure that it can support 128 sample slots times 8 as stereo and include all the slice points. You know what I mean? So I'd imagine that's like the software limitation right there of how to manage that data. Because I don't think they're thinking the Octatrack is going to get cannibalized by the Digitakt 2 if it has sample slicing. I don't think that's what they're thinking. The Octatrack is its own thing. It's a different beast. It's a sample performance machine. So yeah, no individual sample slicing for things. There's workarounds, obviously, where you can set things up on a grid. But if you just record something in, like if I record some hits on the keys, I can't just individually grab those slices without going in and chopping the sample specifically. Another thing with working with the Digitakt over this past month and a half is that I've realized that the workflow has evolved dramatically. This is an experience that I think has matured. So much so that I went back to the Syntakt and I found myself missing the things that this automatically has ready for it. Like even just having the keyboard button right here and those options, and then also the trig modes right here. It just feels like this workflow has evolved and makes a lot of sense at this point. So much so that it's the first time that I've thought maybe I should start getting rid of some of my older Elektron gear. Like the Syntakt, maybe just sample that stuff and put it in the box, and I'm good to go. Back to the workflow though. Over the course of the month using this guy, dedicated, standalone essentially, I used it quite a bit on my lap, and it definitely made me wish that I had internal power, or a battery is what I mean. And it's not like this thing is not capable of housing a battery, because I've seen some photos online. If you pop open the box and look inside, there is plenty of space for an internal battery. And if they didn't want to put an internal battery in it, like maybe give us a thing on the bottom to pop out and like put batteries inside. Obviously, none of that is the case. And yeah, I get it. You can definitely get some solutions with an external battery hooked up next to it. So there is that if you want to go that route. And I'll probably will do that, honestly. But in terms of like a portable box, this thing really could have benefited from a bit of a redesign on the outside, because this is like a true evolution. This is what I'm saying about like the workflow and the experience of using a Digitakt from Mark 1 versus Mark 2 and where it's gone. Like this really does feel like it's been reinvented in a good way, not in a bad way. It's been reinvented and rethought about of how you would actually go about using the experience of making beats on a Digitakt. And they did so much of that without considering maybe it's time to change like the actual feeling of the box itself. Feel free to disagree with me on this, by the way. Like, I welcome it, no problem. Drop your comments below. For me, using it on my lap, I was like, man, this would have been so cool if it like was just redesigned slightly to include the battery and maybe be a little more friendly for handheld. Like, it's a great box that sits on the desk. It feels gig worthy. I just wish they would have considered maybe a bit more ergonomics and competition towards something like Teenage Engineering products. Not that I want them to copy that by any means. I'm not saying that. I don't want them to make an OP1 field. I don't want them to up the price to $2,000 or some crap like that. I really like what they offer right here, and I think it's smart, it's intelligent, it makes sense, and it's truly evolved from where it's been in the past. But it would have been nice to just go a bit farther, taking this box design, put a battery in there, make it a bit more ergonomic to feel like you could pick it up and walk around with it, or, you know, like the lap friendliness of it being even better. Because as it is right now, it's actually really awesome having it powered on and just having headphones plugged in and making beats on it. It's fun. It's really cool. And yeah, you can get an adapter for the power and get a close experience to that with another power thing hanging off to the side. But it's always different when it's like designed with it in mind, you know? So you don't have to then carry an adapter with the battery thing. Always make sure you don't forget that. And if you do forget it, then it's just a box that can't be powered on. So I should wrap up this video. In conclusion, Digitakt 2 or Digitakt 2 is, in my opinion, a fantastic evolution of the platform. It really did warrant the Mark II. And obviously the big things, stereo sampling and 16 tracks and 8 bars now, they make big differences for me. It's a reason to actually purchase the Mark II version, in my opinion. I wish they would have gone a bit further in terms of the design, but I can't complain really. I think it's an awesome box and I'm really looking forward to using it over the years and seeing where it goes. Hopefully that sample editing feature does make it into the firmware at some point. I have a feeling it probably will, but those things that I mentioned before are probably the reason why it's not in there right now. If you already have the Mark I, should you upgrade to the Mark II? In my opinion, yeah. I think so, personally. Unless you don't care about stereo samples, don't care about 4 bars, and don't care about using more than the 8 audio tracks already. If none of that is interesting to you, then I could see a reason to skip it. But the other features like the workflow and the comb filter and the new machines and probably updates that are going to come in the future, they could definitely be reasons to upgrade. But yeah, that's the video. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you picked up the Digitakt, let me know in the comments. And yeah, I'll see you next time for another one. Peace.